Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden, but we're going to head a little bit north for this review once again, and we're returning to a brewery that I only introduced you to here on the channel for the first time quite recently. But I was impressed with the last beer that I had from these guys. That was their 10th anniversary Imperial Radio. For this one we're going to have a look at one of their older beers. So for this review then we are going to go to Umeå, which is about 2/3 of the way up the east coast of Sweden. Sweden, of course, is a very long country, and we're going to return to U&Me Beer for the second time. This particular beer is called the Imperial Pike. It comes in at 9.9% ABV, and this one is an Imperial Stout. So this one I think should be really quite interesting. So as I mentioned in my last U&Me Beer review, I've actually had this beer for quite some time, but when I got this, I can't remember when, it must be at least a year ago that I got this, but when I got this beer, I actually really struggled to find any information on this brewery, and it was only when I got the 10th anniversary beer and tried the research again that I was able to find the information on these guys. So yeah, glad that I'm finally able to review this beer, because it was one that I was really interested in at the time, and hopefully you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. I'm very, very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. As I mentioned, a 9.9% ABV Imperial Stout, named after the pike, of course. The pike, as a fish, it's a really, really, next level predator. When they're blind, they can still sense things through the water and stuff like this. They can hold themselves still in very, very strong currents and stuff like this. A really fascinating animal, but as you can see, they're not the prettiest looking of things. But yeah, really, really the ultimate predator fish, basically. It's craziness to be honest with you. So yeah, go and read a few of the Wikipedia pages on the stuff that the pike can do. It's really quite interesting actually. I remember watching a documentary on these quite a while ago. But anyway, as I say, we're not going to talk about the beer, not about the fish itself, but yeah, 9.9% Imperial Stout, this one, from U&Me Beer in Umeå, about 2/3 of the way up the east coast of Sweden. So yeah, let's get on with this review then. Looking forward to trying this beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on it as well. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future again from U&Me Beer. There is one there already, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is massively, massively appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about U&Me Beer then, on to my brewery notes. So U&Me Beer, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Umeå. And the company was founded back in 2010 by a group of 10 teachers. So this is Benny Norén, Göran Westberg, Thomas Dahlström, Lars Nordström, Carl Magnus Häggström, Morten Almerud, Hans Lehrer, and then Kjell Lundgren, and also Håkan Bergström. So many of these guys had been really interested in whiskey, and they used to do a lot of whiskey tastings together for a number of years. And initially they actually wanted to start a distillery, but they realised when they were in the initial stages of planning this that it would be a massive project and it wouldn't yield any results for at least 3 years, which is the minimum aging period of whiskey. So instead they turned their attention to brewing beer, and the main man in creating the recipes for the beer is Göran Westberg, but he shared the brewing with others, as most of it was actually done on weekends. So they had a sort of brewing rota system actually, where they would they would do the beers. I think they had a whole 5-week rota system or something like that, where they would go in and do lots of different stuff together. So it was quite clever how they were doing these things in the early days. But they opened up a premises in the Röbäck industrial area of the city, and they launched their beers in the autumn of 2011, and they gradually expanded over the years, and by 2017 they were producing around 15,000 litres of beer per year, and they were using a 500 litre kit with also a 200 litre pilot kit for different test batches to basically make new recipes for different beers that they were going to release later. But over the following years they continued continued to expand their brewing capacity, and they've also continued to expand the fermentation capacity of the brewery as well, and release lots of different beers. But as of December 2020, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 35 different varieties of beer, according to Untappd. And recently, I think the 10th anniversary Imperial Red that I reviewed for you before, that was one of the first ones that they put into cans. So you will find these beers in cans now instead of bottles, actually. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about U&Me Beer for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date about all the latest goings on, and you know, you can have a look at the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, that's all I can tell you about these guys for the moment. But yeah, another very, very interesting and really quite small Swedish brewery, actually. So yeah, this should be pretty cool. But yeah, check out all those links in the video description below, but let's get on and actually have a look at the beer itself. So there you can see the artwork on this one. There you can see the pike just chilling in the water with the hook, if you like, in his mouth. Yeah, they are known to be quite fighty fish when you're fishing them, actually. Yeah, you can see there's the bird outline on the bottle at the back there. That is pretty cool, actually. But it tells you a little bit on the side here, so let's just see about translating that. So in the darkest coffee-coloured waters lies Fullaste, one of the lie these Fullaste, these how would you say, these lively, I guess you could say, lively or cunning fish. Suddenly you feel this. The pull is enormous. You fight. The shakes, the shock travels through your body, and suddenly you feel sweetness. You know that you've got a real seafarer on the line, and together with your fish friends, you feel a long big satisfaction. I think that's basically what it's saying, this one. There's one or two of the words in there that I'm not sure about, but yeah, I think that's basically what it's saying here. It's talking about when you actually catch one of these things and get it out of the water and stuff like that. But yeah, it says here, Imperial Pike is brewed with barley malt, oats, muscovado sugar, coffee, hops and yeast, and then last but not least, Umeå's fine water. So yeah, pretty cool, actually. And as you can see, the artwork on this one is pretty nice, and it says here it's made in collaboration with Costas of Sweden and Emil Oring. So yeah, this one is a little bit of a collaboration beer, this, I guess. Yeah, it was brewed specially as well. On the side here it says for the Fish Friends podcast. So yeah, I guess that's why they called it the Imperial Pike, but I'm sure this beer was quite popular, and that's why they redid it, because it has been released a couple of times, actually. So yeah, this one should be pretty cool. But let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. I notice on the side here it says it's best before September of 2020, but to be honest, it's an Imperial Stout at 9.9%. It's probably going to be okay. I'm just wondering how long I had this for then. Maybe I got this more than a year ago, come to think of it. Definitely bought it in, I'm sure it was 2019. Sometime that we got this. But yeah, let's get this guy out then and we'll get on with the tasting then. A 9.9% Imperial Stout with coffee and muscovado sugar and various other things in it. So yeah, let's get this guy out and into the glass. Very curious about this. I think this should be very interesting. I do need to try a few more beers from U&Me Beer, perhaps like a there's only a wee tiny bit of sediment on the bottom of this one. That's quite impressive, actually. But yeah, only a little bit left there on the bottom, I think. But yeah, I need to try a few more beers from U&Me Beer, actually, and see how we get on with them. But yeah, as you can see with this beer, and as you would expect from an Imperial Stout, to be honest, this one has poured a dark ebony rosewood colour. If we shine the light through this, it does have a tiny little bit of a kind of Coca-Cola coloured edge to it, but yeah, it looks very, very nice. Yeah, dark ebony rosewood colour. When this beer poured, it poured with about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say light beigey coloured head. There was one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass there, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, but I mean overall it does look it did look pretty damn nice actually. So yeah, nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. I'm surprised that the head didn't actually hold a little bit more. But in fairness, usually you would if you're when it's 9.9%, usually. The higher you go in alcohol percentage, the less likely the head is to kind of sit there for any length of time. And of course this one doesn't have any wheat in it as well, and it's usually wheat that helps head formation a little bit. This one is more of a kind of oat stout, so I guess it's more of a kind of oatmeal coffee stout, this one. But yeah, regardless, it looks very, very nice. But yeah, nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. So let's have a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this one. Very curious about this, as I said. That does come across very, very nicely. Yeah, the aroma of this beer is actually very, very nice. So take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of this, but yeah, we're going to have a look at this properly. So, as I've told you before, coffee beans are one of my favourite adjuncts that you can put into beer, and the main reason is that you can get so much diversity from them. When it comes to coffee beans, it's all about the metres above sea level at which the coffee is grown, and of course when you grow coffee in different locations, you've got different soil compositions, different mineral compositions on the water, and so on. So coffee beans from different parts of the world are always going to give you different flavour and aroma profiles. But yeah, the metres above sea level, the higher that you grow the mazel, the higher above sea level that you grow these coffee beans, the more likely you are to get fruity and citrusy flavours and all of these kind of things out of it, and that really translates well into these big imperial stouts actually. So coffee stouts have really grown on me over the last kind of 2 years or so, since Dugis released the Key and the Sidamo Dim2. Those were awesome coffee imperial stouts, and I still hold that opinion that Dugis are one of the best coffee stout producers in the world in my opinion. So yeah, this beer I think is going to be a nice treat actually. Another very good Swedish coffee stout is the Dubbel La Bomba from Muri's Kvarta Brewery, so definitely check out that one as well if you're into this style of beer. But yeah, so the coffee bean in this one comes out straight away. You get that lovely kind of smoothness out of it actually, which is nice. To me it's quite a smooth and earthy coffee, this one, but it does have a degree of aromaticity and perhaps just a little bit of a kind of slight, a very, very slight red fruity note out of this one. But overall, very, very smooth earthiness. A very, very smooth earthy roast in this one, and then a nice little bit of aromaticity actually, which is great, and then just a little bit of fruitiness too. So yeah, I really like how the aroma of this beer actually goes together. And we've only focused on the coffee beans so far. So yeah, the coffee bean side of this beer goes together really nicely. You can smell the smoothness of this beer underneath as well. You can smell that lovely big kind of smooth, oaty note in there as well, which is great. You can smell the oats just forming the backbone of this beer. It just gives the beer such a lovely smoothness. So yeah, a little bit of brown bread in there with the oats. You can smell the kind of a little bit of a chocolatey character in this one as well. I do get a little bit of a kind of 50-60% cocoa chocolate out of this one. It's got a little bit of milkiness to it, but it does have a wee bit of the kind of things you would associate with a darker chocolate as well. But yeah, the brown sugars that come out of this too are very, very nice. They come across, I'm guessing that's the muscovado sugar. It comes across quite sweet to a degree, but at the same time it does have a little bit of a kind of toasty edge to it, which is really, really quite nice actually. I think that the blend of things that you've got going in this beer is really interesting. So yeah, smooth oaty backbone, definitely. A little bit of brown kind of bready notes on top of that. Then you've got the brown sort of muscovado sugar. Then you have a little bit of the chocolate kind of on top of that. The beer smells very, very layered, and then of course you've got the coffee beans kind of infused into the whole thing actually. So the aroma of this beer I think is very nice and very layered. On the hoppy side of things then, let's have a look at that. The hoppy side of things, yeah, when this beer is an imperial stout, it's obviously going to be malt forward, but when I've had this beer about a year, quite a lot of the hoppy character will have dropped out of it, at least from the green side of things. But yeah, you do get a little bit of earthiness out of this one. You can pick up a little hint of a floral aromaticity and also a wee bit of grassiness, but the fruits in this one are there kind of plentifully. I'm not sure exactly what hop they might have used in this one. There's a lot of different possibilities, maybe like, you know, Summit or Williamette or something like this. I do think this is an American hopped stout, just going from the aroma in this one. You know, Eureka is another possibility to using this to get these lovely big fruity notes. But yeah, it's quite a red fruity leaning stout rather than anything else. So yeah, straight away with this one, you get a nice, you do get a nice little bit of a kind of oily, juicy, kind of plummy character out of it. There's a wee bit of a raisiny sharpness in there as well. You get some figs. Do you get more kind of red fruits than that? Yeah, I would actually say it's mainly plums that you get out of this one. It's quite an oily, fruity smelling beer, this one. So you get a lot of plums out of this. You do get a good bit of that juicy blackcurrant, but at the same time you get that more oily and slightly sharper blackberry note out of this one, to be honest. So it's really interesting, that actually. I would be curious to know exactly what hop they put in this one, but because it doesn't say on the it doesn't say exactly on the website which hops they put in this one. It tells you a lot about the malt base, but it doesn't really tell you what hop they've actually they've put in this one. But yeah, one wonder. Williamette, Eureka, something like this. Summit, of course, could be another option. You know, at a push it could be, I don't think it's English Bramblings Cross, it could be German Northern Brewer. That's another one that's going to give you these lovely red fruity notes. We can speculate all day, but what I will say is the fruity notes in this one come across as really oily, lots of plums, a little bit of raisins initially, and then a lot of black currants and blackberries. The more that you smell the beer as well. So yeah, definitely take a little bit of time to ponder over the aroma of this beer before you try it, but we're going to have a taste of this one now and see how we got on. So yeah, this one is the Imperial Pike, a 9.9% Imperial Stout brewed officially for, or brewed specially for the Fish Friends Fiske Companion podcast. And I had this bottle for about a year now, so yeah, nice to finally get around to reviewing this one for you here. So yeah, looking forward to this. Let's get stuck in a 9.9% Imperial Stout named after the ultimate predator in various kind of freshwater lakes. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Oh yeah, that comes across very, very nicely, I have to say. Yeah, I'm just going to say straight away, thumbs up to U&Me Beer once again for this. This is a solid beer. And yeah, the one thing, they weren't kidding about the water on this. It comes across as really, that's the first thing you're going to notice about this beer, is just how clean the water in this one feels. But the flavour pardon me, the flavour profile of this beer is actually very, very nice as well. So yeah, there's a lot of really interesting kind of subtleties and stuff going on in this one. So where do we start with this beer? First off, I want to say I think there's a little bit of Carafa in this one. There's just something about the backbone of this beer that reminds me of German Carafa. There could be a wee bit of Special B in here as well, actually. There's something very familiar about the malty backbone of this beer. So yeah, straight away with this one you can feel that nice roasty toasty backbone to the beer. It's got a little bit of the kind of more roasty toasty character you might expect of Special B, but at the same time you do get a little bit of that slightly softer, well-fired bread crusty thing that you would expect of say, you know, some of the Carafa malts. Carafa, of course, is a trademarked malt type from Weirmann in Bamberg in northern Bavaria in Germany, Franconia to be specific. So yeah, you do get a little bit of that. You can feel that nice well-fired bread crusty note there, and a bit of the smooth kind of brown bready character. So it's a really interesting blend of things that's going on in this in the base of this beer, actually. So yeah, this is a really nice, the backbone of this beer, I think, is really quite nice, but the coffee for me, it's kind of interesting that, because I find the coffee comes out on the back third of your palate. So yeah, that whole brown bready, bread crusty, Special B sort of thing, talking about that blankets the middle third of your palate and then goes towards the back third of your palate. As you go to the back third of your palate, of course, it does get a little bit more kind of what's the word, it does get a little bit almost harsher, if you like, in terms of its roasty bitterness, but the beer still retains a hell of a lot of smoothness. On the back third of your palate, though, you can really feel the smoothness of the coffee beans coming out on this one. And then as you move on the back third of your palate, it's really the coffee beans, and then you start to get the smooth oaty layer, that sort of oatmeal layer just sitting on top of those kind of bread crusty notes that I was talking about earlier. So yeah, the oats sit there kind of on top of the middle third of your palate, I think, and then the coffee, they sort of spread into the back third of the palate a little bit, but then it's the coffee, and then the coffee smoothness just sits on top of the oats on that back third of the palate as well, which is quite interesting. So the coffee itself, for me, I think it's quite similar to what you'd expect from the Aroma, in fairness. So yeah, for me, the coffee side of the beer, it's got a very smooth, earthy sort of roast to it, which I think is really quite nice. It does have that smooth, earthy roast, and I think it's a bit darker on the back of the palate, of course, but as you come further forward, you get a few more aromatic properties out of it, and you do get, there is a nice little bit of an almost red fruity kind of thing going on with that coffee as well. So yeah, quite a smooth, earthy roast, a little bit aromatic, and also some nice red fruity characters in this one, so it gets a thumbs up from me in that regard. Actually, I do like how that side of this beer comes together. So yeah, just pay attention to that back third of your palate there to get all those nice coffee notes. But yeah, as you come further forward on the beer, then as I said, you've got a nice kind of smooth, earthy layer there, but in the very centre of your palate you do get a wee bit of a kind of brown sugar. But the thing that's interesting about this beer is that on top of that oaty layer that you have in the middle third of your palate, you can just feel it's like a very toasty, almost very dry kind of brown sugary note that you get out of this one. It's not oily in the same sense that you would find from a lot of other imperial stouts. So the the types of flavours that you get in this beer are not surprising, but the way that they actually come out is quite interesting, I have to say. And I do wonder if part of that is because this beer, for an imperial stout, it's got a lovely flavour, and as I say, don't get me wrong, but the mouthfeel of this one, I think, is the real quirky side of it, and that's the water. The water makes this beer feel very, very clean and almost very light in a sense, actually. So yeah, it's not the thickest and sort of silkiest stout that you're going to come across. It is actually more of a kind of slick thing that's going on here, and I think that the kind of smoothness of the oats in this really kind of add to that effect, to be honest with you. So yeah, quite a quirky imperial stout, this one, from that sense, I'll have to say. Yeah, interesting stuff. On the hoppy side of things then, I think we have covered the malty base quite well, other than to say, and you do get a few kind of woody notes emerging out of this one towards the kind of front. If you go to the front corners of your palate, then diagonally back, you will get a few woody flavours kind of emerging out of this one. And if you go to the very centre of your palate and move forward, there's a slight nuttiness to the beer as well. You will notice little undertones like this, but that's very common in imperial stouts. In the back corners of the palate, then you've got a nice little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward along the side of this one, it does develop a little bit of herbal quality there, but then as you reach the front corners of the palate, you can get a little bit of a trace of a floral aromaticity. So yeah, I do get how that kind of goes together then. Round the very front curve of the palate, there's a little bit of a lighter sort of grassy aroma to this one, or flavour, sorry. But remember, when this beer has been in the bottle about a year, most of the hoppy characters are going to have dropped away from this one, so just bear that in mind. But yeah, front third of your palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters push their way out of the beer. So that's the last thing we're going to focus on before the mouthfeel. Let's look at this. So yeah, when you take this beer in, it does have a wee bit of a kind of raisiny kind of sharpness to it. You've got a little bit of a kind of, how would you say? Yeah, you've got a little bit of a kind of oily, plummy character to it as well. But then as you move further forward along that front third of your palate, as I always say, the fruity, juicy esters, they roll out of the beer in that little oily bubble at the front of the tongue. So at the back of that, you've got a little bit of you get a bit of raisiny sharpness, you also get a bit of a juicy plum, and then as you move further forward from that, you do get a wee bit of a figgy character, and then on the front half of that front third of your palate, you get a more kind of oily note out of this one. So you can feel a little bit of the juicy kind of black currants there, but then you've also got a bit more of a kind of oily, you also have a little bit more of a kind of oily, kind of blackberry type flavour out of this one, which is really quite interesting. So yeah, I like how that side of this beer goes together as well. The fruity side of this one is quite nice, but you can feel a little bit of that coffee smoothness. It's interesting, you can feel a little bit of the oatiness and the kind of coffee smoothness just pushing its way forward under that front third of the tongue. So yeah, I like how that goes together. So yeah, took a little bit of that in the wrong way there, but yeah, the fruity side of this beer is quite nice. I'd say that it's balanced between being kind of wet and juicy and a little bit oily in that sense. But yeah, it is the flavour profile of this beer is very, very nice, and it's got a few kind of quirky things in it, as I say, such as the brown sugar and stuff like that. But yeah, in terms of the how would you say, in terms of the mouthfeel, then that's the last thing we need to cover. I would definitely say this is not the thickest of stouts that you're going to come across. Instead of being like really thick and creamy or whatever, this one really does have a little bit more of a kind of slickness to it. It comes across as a very, very slick stout rather than anything else. Sorry about the edit, guys, memory card being a pain once again. But yeah, like I was saying, I would describe this beer as being, you know, kind of top end of mid-bodied. It's got a real slickness to it. Carbonation in this one is very, very light actually, and I think you really get a real clean, wet mouthfeel out of this stout. It's really got a very kind of prominent slickness to it almost actually. So this is quite a quirky stout in that sense. It's definitely one of the lighter bodied imperial stouts that I've come across in recent times, and I think partially that's down to the smoothness of the oats, but also to that very, very clean feeling, that very kind of minerally kind of feeling water type quality that you get out of this one. When they talk about the water in these beers, it really does come across actually, and I think I said that in the 10th anniversary Imperial Red review as well. I'm sure I said the same thing about that one actually. But yeah, in terms of bitterness out of this beer, what are we going to say? Yeah, this beer, I think you've got a sort of 50 or 60, maybe about 50 IBU out of this one. I don't find this beer overly bitter, to be quite honest with you. You do get a bit of bitterness from the coffee in the back of the palate and a wee bit of hoppy bitterness, but not too much. I think this beer is maybe about 50, 60 IBUs, to be honest with you. But remember, this is my weakest part of beer reviewing. I'm not so good at telling the bitterness of beers, because I've got it spectacularly wrong in a few different videos. So yeah, take my IBU ratings with a bit of a pinch of salt, definitely. But yeah, nice little bit of bitterness out of this one, both from the malt base and from the hops. But the malty side of this beer is very, very smooth actually. It does get a little bit drier the further you go into the aftertaste, and there is just a wee touch of sweetness to it. But overall, the malty side of this beer for me is really quite nice and smooth. There's a little bit hoppy character to this beer, as I said, but the fruity notes out of this beer are really quite wet and slightly juicy at the same time. There's a little bit of sharpness to the fruits when you take it in, but then otherwise it becomes really quite nice and wet and juicy, if you like. So yeah. So yeah, really nice. Really nice tasting beer, this one. I like how it goes together actually. So yeah, this beer gets a big thumbs up for me. I think that kind of rounds up the review quite nicely, this one. The flavour profile, as I say in this one, it has lots of flavours that you would expect, of course, from an imperial stout, but the way they come out is quite quirky, and I think that's what really makes this beer stand out a little bit actually. This is one of the slickest and kind of cleanest feeling imperial stouts that I've come across in that I can think of in all the reviews that I've done on the channel. So this is a very, very quirky beer from that perspective actually. So big thumbs up to U&Me Beer for this one, and if you get the chance to try this, I highly recommend that you do. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this review. This one was the Imperial Pike, a 9.9% imperial stout from U&Me Beer in Umeå, about 2/3 of the way up Sweden. on the east coast of the country. I do need to get up there at some point and take a look at it. I need to explore northern Sweden a little bit more, so we'll need to see about doing that a little bit later on. But yeah, that's all we have to say about this beer for the moment. So yeah, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from U&Me Beer as well. We will no doubt return to these guys at some point soon. I'll need to have a look at what other beers they have and see if there are some other really interesting ones in there. But the two we've had so far, the Imperial Red and then this one, the Imperial Pike, have both been pretty good. So maybe we'll see a bit of regular IPA or a lager or something like that for the next review. But yeah, let's leave it there. Thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from U&Me Beer. Do give me some other recommendations of breweries to check out from Umeå. And hopefully, as I say, we can return to these guys at some point in the fairly near future. But yeah, your guys' input is always very, very valued, and it's always great to learn about new and different breweries from different areas of Sweden. So yeah, thank you again for watching, and I'll catch you guys very soon. The Imperial Pike, 9.9% Imperial Stout from U&Me Beer in Umeå, kind of a little bit further north here in Sweden. Slange, skål, cheers, and thanks for watching.